the way to get people to act like owners is to be able to clarify what's in it for them when the company does well.
Welcome, folks. My guest today is Stephen King, who is the President and CEO of GrowthForce. Stephen, how are you today?
Great, Anthony.
You see, I know you had to really pronounce the full Anthony there, so your New York accent didn't come through, but I appreciate you doing that.
Hey, Anthony, how you doing?
Stephen, why don't you tell us a little bit about GrowthForce, your background, how you got to where you are today, and then I'll jump into asking you some questions.
Sure. GrowthForce does outsourced bookkeeping, accounting, and controller services for companies that want to run better, grow faster, and make more money. And companies typically come to us because they're frustrated that they're not getting the numbers on time and they're not helping them make decisions. They worry about whether the data is correct, and they're got anxiety around cash flow. So when they get upset with the accounting and they know there's a better way that's automated and on their phones and timely, accurate, and most importantly actionable, then they get a team of 3 people from GrowthForce to help them be a full service accounting department.
And how did your background as a CFO lead you into that? And how does your financial acumen tie into your decision making as a CEO? And then we'll go.
So that's CFO is the key piece there, right? There's a big difference between a CPA and a CFO, and I got to do both. CFOs look forward. They're strategic, right? They're a chief. They're sitting with the chief executive officer to help you figuring out what does the future look like and how do we get there. And they rely on management accounting. They rely on the numbers that show the drivers of the decisions you're trying to make. The CFO helps you do data-driven decisions, and you can't do that until you first know what the decisions are. Then you know what the drivers are, and that's the stuff you want to show on a report so you can look at data to drive those decisions. So that's kind of what's the big unique difference with GrowthForce.
And then I guess from your team, how in practice does being able to look forward, how do you equip the businesses, small to medium, as moving forward, like through those financial decisions, as in our listeners have decisions they need to make? What are some of the key learnings that they could take from being able to look at their data more effectively?
Study the past to predict the future, right? What we do is, as a CPA, you can send them an income statement and a balance sheet every month, and those are really important because they're designed for external users. They're designed for the bank to make sure that you can repay the loan or to give you a loan. They're designed for the IRS to get your pound of flesh. They're designed for investors to help see the equity, is it going up? But they weren't designed to help you make decisions. They're not actionable. And so what we suggest is you take that income statement and you break it down to your smallest unit, whatever your unit is. We do project-based service businesses and nonprofits. And in a project-based service business, you focus on a project as a unit, a customer as a unit. It might be, if you're doing billable work by the hour, it might be a billable hour is a unit. Whatever shows up on an invoice. In manufacturing, it's going to be a widget. I just spoke to a group in Boston, a big brewery. It was gallons delivered was the unit, right? Whatever your unit is, you want to look at the economics of that. You want to see the profitability. Your income minus the cost to earn the income. And the secret sauce is payroll is the biggest expense most businesses have, by far. If you look at it as a percentage of their expenses, it's often 70 to 80%. There's nothing else in a service business. There's rent and utilities, but they're trivial compared to the cost of the people. When you add in the health insurance, the 401k, the training, the recruiting, it's the biggest part. And so the ability to take those labor costs, instead of having them grouped in an income statement, a traditional financial report for the bank, alphabetically, and payroll is 3/4 of the way down under the P's, and you see payroll expenses and you see payroll taxes. You might see officers' compensation is the third breakout, maybe. You take that labor cost and you figure out which of the costs are direct costs that need to go above the line and which costs are indirect, they're overhead, and they go below the line. The line is gross profit. That's the single most important number on an income statement, is your gross profit as a percentage. And if you pay a commission to a sales rep for a job, you subtract that commission from the gross profit, you get to your net profit. It's also called your contribution margin. Contribution margin and gross profit margin are the single most important numbers to be looking at in the business, because it tells you how much does each customer contribute to pay for overhead, to pay for its share of the overhead, and to generate its share of the profits. And if you know what that on a per unit basis, on a job or a customer or a billable hour or a gallons of beer delivered, if you know how much overhead has to get covered and how much profit you need to make, now you can make data-driven decisions, the single most important data-driven decision, which is pricing.
Well, what I find really interesting about this, and so our listeners have, been listening for a lot. We talk a lot about people strategy, talk a lot about strategic planning, but I think what's important for all leaders to understand is that systems perspective of the business. It's like, sometimes if you don't have that financial acumen and you haven't developed it, then you don't exactly know what to look for. Whereas you have been trained to look exactly for that. And so what I want our listeners to take away is really look at, as a CEO, as a leader, how you can incorporate elevated financial decision making, how you can look at driving the profitability and better understanding what drives profitability, and then recognizing that your business is a system, including all of those inputs, and that makes the difference. Stephen, well, when you and I were, go ahead, sorry.
Well, most people don't know that. I mean, Anthony, you really say something that's critical, because they don't teach you this in high school. Right? They don't teach you this. Even if you go to business school, they don't teach you this. Small business school, right? That's what we need, is a small business school. And a lot of these are the best practices that the Fortune 1000 implemented, right? I was at Ernst & Young. I was a manager accounting system design. That's where we learned this whole methodology. And now, thanks to QuickBooks and the ecosystem that they've built, this is all available to small businesses.
Yeah. Shout out to QuickBooks. I'm a big fan of QuickBooks. Love to have you on here, but it's interesting because you're a product of your environment, of how you grew up. Like, I sold concert tickets, and so I'm like, okay, I know that I need to sell this thing for $10 and I need to get 100 people or I lose money. Like, that's my widget. If I'm selling beer, I was a waiter. It's like, this is how much money I make, 50 cents a beer on a tip. I need to know that stuff and the difference between fixed and variable. But if you never live it, it doesn't enter your consciousness. One thing I was going to say, what I thought was interesting, is you had mentioned your Vistage group. And what is your experience as a CEO being part of those groups when you get to see other CEOs have to sort of reflect on a monthly or bi-monthly basis on like a core issue? What does that bring up to you as you reflect on your own business and leadership?
Oh, it's really clear. For me, I'm very vocal about this. The single biggest return on investment I get of all the money I spend is Vistage. And I've told this to the people at Insperity, and they're our biggest strategic alliance partner. But Vistage helps me grow from being a entrepreneur to being a CEO, helping me think strategically, to work on the business and truly be asked the hard questions, and be able to share your fears, uncertainties, and doubts with people who have your back, who have become part of your family. I just finished 15 years. I've been with people for 15 years who, if anything happens to me, my wife and my management team knows, call Robin Stanley on my Vistage chair. She'll know exactly what to do. So, and EO New York, EO is great. I've got a lot of friends who are in EO, and the EO New York group in particular, I have a lot of clients from. That's exactly what you do, is you get advice and counsel from peers. We're also big fans of EOS, the Entrepreneurial Organizing System. That's Traction, and Mark, I want to say Mark Wickersham, but I know it's not. I'm forgetting his name. Traction is, you need help. It's lonely at the top. You can't tell your management team, your wife, your assistant, all your fears, uncertainties, and doubts.
Well, it's what all of those things, actually, I point to a system and a structure, a process, setting habits, setting recurring things, and being able to look outside. I'm going to shout out to McKay CEO Forums up in Canada and the US, actually, but really having somebody to look externally at what you're dealing with. So Maybe before I jump into your experience as a CEO, what was your experience as a CPA and somebody who had to externally look at somebody's finances and say, hey, I can tell your numbers tell a story. What are some of your key learnings from numbers telling a story?
That's not the job. When I had my own CPA firm after Ernst, and the job is compliance, right? The job is to make sure that you're not paying any penalties. The job is to make sure that you're not getting any letters with red letter writing on them from government bureaus, and to minimize the amount of money that you send to the government. So all of the analysis is primarily about tax planning. Management accounting is not a CPA's job. It's a CMA's. We have more CMAs than CPAs here in our company. Because management management accounting is unit economics, and the biggest expense is people. So this is about understanding how people drive profits is what management accounting is all about. Understanding the setting clear written goals and cascading those company goals down to the department, and the department to the team. Harvard did a landmark case study that said the simple act of writing down goals increases your likelihood of success by 83%. So if everybody in the company has a line of sight between what they do and what success is, then they're not going to let the team down. Maslow's hierarchy of needs is what the surprising result of the Harvard study was. People need to belong to something bigger than themselves, and work is our identity. Really important place to be successful in, to feel good about myself when my feet hit the ground in my stocking feet every day. And so if I understand what success is, I'm going to do whatever it takes, especially if I'm part of a team. I'm not going to let my team down.
How did you, if there is an origin story here, transitioning from air quotes, a numbers guy to a people guy, and like really recognizing like the importance of a people strategy as it relates to business success?
I made some very expensive mistakes. So I started a company called Virtual Growth in 1995 when Netscape 1.0 came in. In that little accounting practice I thought, oh, my clients' books are a mess. I wish I could outsource this and just me be the CFO and advise people. Instead, I have to make sure the sales tax return is right because it's my name on it. Nobody wants to pay me more than $45 an hour for that kind of work. When Netscape came out, I thought I could do that over the web. So we raised 43 million from Bessemer and Citibank and some blue chip VC firms, and I grew it to about 250 people. And at one point, looked around. We were actually in the Irish Theater on 22nd Street in a manager meeting, and I looked around and I thought, oh my God, who are these people? I don't like them all. This guy doesn't trust that guy. He's stabbing everybody in the back. There's silos galore. What have I done? How did this happen? And we hired Heidrick and Struggles, and we got paid big money to tier one names. My management team was great. My 10 people were the best part of the company, but the middle management, the people they hired, did not have a culture or alignment around core values. And so one of our investors and Paul Savardi was on my board. And after September 11th, our whole house of cards fell down. Citibank shut down their venture capital group, and Bessemer says, oh, well, we're out if they're out. And the whole thing got rescued from the ashes from Insperity, where they picked up what was left, moved me and my company to Kingwood, Texas, and I started Administaff Financial Management Services. And I walked in to their beautiful new building. At the time, they were about a $3-4 billion business. They're a $5 billion business now. And I walked in and I thought, oh my God, everybody here is happy. Everybody loves what they do. Nobody quits. And they're all busy and they're all working hard. And I reported to the CEO of a $4 billion HR company. And I missed an important step. My father-in-law, John Stern, was executive vice president of human resources at Sony. So when I married Trish Stern, I suddenly had an HR expert in the family. And he was on the board of Virtual Growth with Paul Savardi. And so every time I went to Trish's house, I got a board meeting on the people side and the management side. So I learned from John Stern what a human capital strategy is. And then I learned from Paul Savardi and Insperity how you execute it in small businesses. And so, we came up with this 5 steps that we applied to GrowthForce, and we've got a webinar on it. Step 1 is, why do you exist? What is your unique selling proposition? What is a reason why somebody would hire you? Step 2 is culture by design. So what are the behaviors and the core values that you will be successful in your company based on why you exist? What is the value? What is your mission and your vision from step 1? Then what behaviors will be successful to achieve that mission, that vision? So for us, we do outsourced bookkeeping, accounting, and controller services. We hire people who are passionate about serving small businesses. We look for accountability. They do what they say, they'll say what they do. They're resourceful, they're gonna figure it out. And they wanna be part of a team. And so we recruit for those behaviors and those core values, and not the skills to pay the bills. We can teach them QuickBooks easily, but I can't teach somebody to have snap, to be a problem solver, to be innovative. And so that's the core culture by design step. Step 3 is what I was mentioning about.
Can I ask you a question just about your culture really quick?
Yeah.
Since you guys are doing stuff remotely, is everybody in Texas in your company, or are they in different locations across the US or abroad?
We have just under 60 people. We have 50 of them are here in Kingwood, Texas, which is northeast Houston. We have an 18,000 square foot service center. But because my last company was called Virtual Growth, from the very first day I started GrowthForce, we were a virtual business as well. So it's a hybrid. And, we had to anyhow, because, Kingwood, Houston floods. So, you want to get out of town and go to your sister in San Diego, go ahead. Everything's virtual. But we believe the culture for us, the acronym for us is SMART, right? We have SNAP, which means we want problem solvers who are innovators. We have meaning. We love this. We wake up every day and say, we get to serve small businesses. We get to do accounting. We're accountable. We do what we say what we do. We're resourceful, and we have teamwork. So that's the core thing. And what Insperity taught us to do, we became a client. Once after September 11th, Insperity stock tanked. Wall Street said you can't diversify in outsourced accounting. And so we spun it off, and I became a partner with Insperity. And then I became a client of Insperity. So I really learned how to unleash the power of that human capital, both as an actual client. And the first thing they did after we got to about 6 or 8 people say is, which employee embodies those core values the most? And everybody in the company knows this story. And I pointed to a bookkeeper who was with us for about a year, who was going to school at Sam's at Houston State University at night, who was the life of the company. She had problem solvers. She loved coming to work every day. She would stand at my door and say, you asked me to do 3 things. I can only get 2 done. What do I do with the other one? She was accountable. She was resourceful. She'd come in and say, you know what I found? And she always was a team player. She would go around to this 5 or 6 other people and say, what are we doing for lunch? By 9:30. We had Chinese yesterday. How about Italian? Does everybody want Italian? All right. Which Italian now? By 10 o'clock, we were all going to lunch together. We looked at Marcia Gibb, who was our bookkeeper at the time, who's now 14 years later, our director of onboarding. And we built the persona around our ideal behavior employee. And then once we worked backwards from there, the rest fell into place.
I actually am so curious about that, because we talk about culture so much, and we talk about like culture eats strategy for breakfast, which everybody's heard, which is true. How did you find that the embodiment of that culture supported your growth? Like, how do we tie that soft people stuff, that's hard, to actually like, hey, you got 60 people, like that's a huge win for a lot of people. How did you see that decision to personify those values translate to the company growth?
What's really fascinating is, again, I'm a data junkie, right? So I really study the financial impact of people. On average, according to a salary.com study, there's 2 hours wasted every day. When I do my Vistage speaking, some of the people have you been in my office? Nothing gets done before lunch. And the cost of that and the cost of turnover are the 2 places where there's a big difference between the high performing team and the low performing team. The AICPA did a study. They said 68% of the value of a company is its people. It's the relationships with the customer and the supplier. It's the understanding of the strategic vision of the leaders and the ability to execute that vision. It's the intellectual property, the technology, the systems, the forms. And every company is built on tribal knowledge. So when a member of the tribe leaves, so does the knowledge. And so they wanted to require, the AICPA, the American Institute of CPAs, wanted to require a footnote disclosure on publicly held companies on employee turnover, because there's a direct correlation between companies that have low turnover and their profit margins. It's not just the cost, the direct cost, the agency fees and you have to buy ads and you have recruiting time and you have to pay PTO as people are walking out the door and premiums to the people who are covering overtime. And then, it's all these indirect costs, the lost productivity when all of a sudden the team shuts down. I remember what happened to me when somebody was like, holy crap, they went to go work as an accountant for the school district. And they got, same price, but they got Christmas off. And they got 2 weeks in the summer. And I lost everybody working because you're now having to get employee engaged again. And then you got to train those people. You take your most expensive person, your best person out of billable hours and put them hopefully not in a windowless conference room for 2 weeks to teach them, the new guy or girl, the ropes. And that's double the cost of payroll and no revenue coming in. It's typically, I've calculated for me, 200% of the salary of a middle manager. So if I lose a $65,000 person, then it's going to cost me 130 grand. And a small change in that, the math is pretty amazing. When you can, we had 21% turnover. That's the accounting industry averages is 21. We were right on average because we're all stealing from each other. There's not enough knowledge workers to do all the work. When you change that by 20% a year, we got it down then to 16%. So, instead of us losing 8 people, right now we're losing 6 people. I calculated it saved me $95,000 to $100,000. And then when we did it again, the next year got it down to 12%, another 20% reduction. We saved $192,000. And by recruiting, right, the reason why people terminate, and there's a difference between planned turnover and unplanned turnover. If somebody doesn't fit the core values, get rid of them as fast as possible. I'm talking about unplanned turnover. When somebody walks in and says, I got bad news, you're not going to be happy. They're an earner, right? They're an earner. You can't lose an earner. So the way to keep them after you recruit them is give them clear written goals. Okay, report actual results. That's step 3, right? Getting goal alignment. Setting goals and writing them down increases your chance of success. And then report actual against those in step 4 so that everybody understands where they stand. Look at those what management monitors gets done. My favorite business book is Traction by Gino Wickman and the Entrepreneur Organizing System. And so, whatever you want to get done, set a budget because the budget will increase success. People will give you that discretion everywhere because they want to let you down, and then track the actuals. And finally, in step 5, the most important, recognize and reward. You can get a big ROI when you add a financial reward and you recognize people based on their performance. Gallup did a study that said that the companies with the top earnings per share are the ones that have tied their employee recognition and increased their employee engagement. They have earnings per share 4 times the rate of companies that don't. This is not just somebody making me, Stephen King, CPA, saying you should do this. There's data that backs it up. Recognition and reward. It's staggering. I love this statistic I'm going to share with you. if you combine reward recognition and your employee engagement, you'll get 63% increased productivity. That translates, according to this Society of Human Resource Managers report, that translates to 58% return on profit margin. And how do you get that? 52% increase in customer retention. Why? Because happy employees create happy clients. Happy clients stay for a long time. People who stay for a long time make you a lot of money. And then the reason why you have an increase in customer retention is because this gets you a 51% increase in employee retention.
So I'm going to jump in because you covered just so much stuff and just there's a lot of numbers here, but okay. So 5 steps. Why do you exist and your unique selling proposition, unique value proposition? The culture by design, setting those core values that will drive the fulfillment of that USP. Setting clear goals, making sure that you're actually playing the game with the scoreboard, reporting actual against the goals, so actually putting that in place, and then recognizing and rewarding behavior, because that's the important part. One of the things that I really want to highlight for everybody, we facilitate strategic planning sessions. Some people say, hey, why should I do this planning? It's like, oh, it costs money. Like, it just costs money, not a lot of money, it just costs money. And it's like, what's the cost of not doing it? What's the cost of losing people? What's the cost of not having them engaged? And you said it a bunch of times. It's not necessarily all the other stuff. It's the engagement and the focus towards those things that really drives the numbers. I have 2 questions for you before we finish up. Okay. One of them was, what do you do to foster the culture of that tracking and that, like, the desire to follow data? Because some people see it as like micromanagement. They see it as like reporting versus it sounds like your company's embraced it and they like enjoy being held to that standard. Can you speak of how you've done that practically?
Yeah, because of step 5, recognition and reward. It's the most important of the 5 steps. To go back through that math, if you increase your employee retention, you'll increase your customer retention, which will increase your gross profit margins, which will increase everything, right? So the way to get discretionary effort, the way to get people to act like owners, is to be able to clarify what's in it for them when the company does well, and to have demonstrate a track record of sharing in the success. So, for example, I love 401ks the best because it's so measurable, right? We just had a company meeting last week, Friday, and we follow the EOS system. So step 3 was the goal. We shared a 10-year plan, a 3-year plan, a 3-year vision of what that looks like, and then a 1-year plan, and then the 4 rocks for the whole company that we're going to do to accomplish the 1, 3, and 10-year goals. And we went through what is our mission, what is our vision, what is our core values as step 1, 2, and 3. We follow these 5 steps every company meeting. But the annual one is different because in step 5, we line out, okay, here's our goal. We want to increase our profit from X to Y. How we want to do that? We want to increase our gross profit from Y to Z. And if we do that, here's what's going to happen. For example, we're at 4% 401k. I want to be at 6%. That's the max that we're allowed. It's based on how much profit we make. So if we achieve certain goals, then we add another percent and another percent. And for those of you who are in your early 30s with your first and second child, that extra 2% is going to add up to a lot when you get your 25-year anniversary with GrowthForce. We have profit sharing. And so when there is profit, we share it. And there's the managers share more than the staff. We have forecasted how many more people we're going to hire. We don't want to be 200 people. I did that. I want to have a happy company where everybody loves coming to work every day and not have to worry about managing hyper growth. So we don't take every client, but we are going to hire 35 people. And so that creates manager jobs that don't exist, director jobs that don't exist. And the leaders of our company are in the room right now, is my constant message. This is a company where you can build your career, not just get a job. It's on our website. We're called GrowthForce for a reason, and even if you don't get promoted, you're going to learn something new every day. We're a learning organization. And so what's in it for you is critical to tying the whole thing to the human capital strategy and the financial management strategy. I probably should have summarized this, Anthony, at the beginning. The big lesson I got from those virtual growth days is you can have a financial management strategy, but if you don't also have the human capital, you're not going to make it. We tie it together where the financial management strategy fits back into the human capital is in the reward and recognition side. And recognition is more important than reward. Maslow, you have to get your basic needs of safety. You have to pay someone a salary that allows them to lose the lifestyle they've grown accustomed to. They have to have the benefits to feel safe. But our need to belong, and then our need for self-esteem and self-actualization is way more important. And so what we also try to do is we have a kudos. This is another Insperity tip. It doesn't cost you a dime. Most managers are taught to catch somebody doing something wrong. That's what my managers at Virtual Growth did. They were jerks. Look what I saw this guy do and stab him in the back. Instead, we teach our managers to celebrate catching somebody doing something right. We have a kudos at growthforce.com email. And every time somebody finds somebody enabling or embodying our culture, SNAP, meaning accountability, resourceful, or team, then send a message, either from a client or about a client. And then we put all those, what Gino Wickman says in Traction is what management monitors gets done. Employee retention is our number one thing. Number one. Employee engagement is number one measure of that. Kudos is our number one measure of employee engagement. So we have a contest. We put the name of the person who submitted the kudo because we want to encourage that, and the person who got it, and pull out their name and give them a prize. But more importantly, we take the kudos and organize them by core value at every meeting, and we review the people who did it so they get to tell a story in front of the whole company, get some recognition about how we worked with our client as being meaningful or resourceful or SNAP. So it's fun to recognize. That's the key.
Well, I appreciate that. And I want to acknowledge, that's the future of leadership is no longer going to be that mandated cracking the whip. From my perspective is, especially as you have, younger, like different changing workforce needs and wants, being able to do that. And just for our own listeners, how long do you think it took you to get to where you are right now?
I'm embarrassed to tell you that.
You don't have to go as far as that. Okay, well, we'll leave it at that.
I tell you right now, I'm 60. Okay, I would say this has happened in, I know. I hired my chief operating officer, Loretta Mormino, 7 years ago. That's when we got it right, when she went. And this is also Traction, when you have an integrator, so that the visionary does the visionary job and the integrator runs the company. That when I did that is really when I started to see it embody the whole thing. But that's 40 years of mistakes right there.
Well, the reason that I share that, and you've just been super gracious this whole interview, is that, for all of us listening, there's people listening that are 20 in their first jobs, and they're doing whatever they need to do. And then there's CEOs that are 60 or 70 or whatever. And I really just want to highlight for everybody that all the stuff that Stephen is talking about, it's not an overnight thing. It is literally a decades-long transformation in leadership. It's 7-year transformation within the organization that obviously didn't just start at that 7-year. And I encourage everybody to take one or two things, whether it's that 5-step model, whether it's looking at data, whether it's setting KPIs that really measure performance, whether that's finding what's in it for them and tying it to, having those aligned vision around, hey, what's good for them is good for the company, something, put it together over the next 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks, whatever it is, and double down and double down and double down. And that's how you create a great culture. That's how you make money. That's how you create a team that stays and really drives those client contributions. So Stephen, I just give you the final word here. What do you want our leaders, listeners to take away from what we've shared, and anything else that you think would be relevant for them to know?
Anthony, I'll just say raging incrementalism. That's what you just described. Bob Goodman, who's the partner at Bessemer for our deal, taught me that. And every day, every week, every month, just get a little bit better. And next thing you know, you'll turn around at age 60 and you figured it out.
Perfect. Just an overnight success that took 40 years. I love it. Where can people get a hold of you on the internet or if they're in Texas?
Sure, you can stop by and visit us virtually on the website, www.growthforce.com. We share a lot of helpful advice, and we can happy to answer any questions anytime. I got a chat box there. Email is the best way to reach me. It's Stephen, Stephen, @growthforce.com, or our website, www.growthforce is GROWTH force.com. I'm on LinkedIn, Stephen King CPA, and Twitter, SKingGForce.
Perfect. And one of the things that you had shared with me earlier is to make your life better, you're on podcast. Is that correct?
Yeah. I've got a Path to Profits podcast where I interview successful business owners and kind of pick their brain on how did they get from struggling with cash flow and breaking even to living that American dream and having the money in the bank.
So connect with Stephen if you want to, well, just connect with him more. And if you host a podcast, have him on. I'm sure it'll make his day.
Yes, thanks, Anthony.
Yeah, you're so welcome. Stephen, thank you for sharing with us. It's been such a blast. And I know that in my own leadership journey, that raging incrementalism, I think it is, I hope I don't mispronounce that.
That's it.
But I'm going to take that forward and just give me a lot to share here. So thank you so much for your time and your generosity today. It's been a pleasure.
Me too. Thanks.
Folks, my guest today has been Stephen King, who's the president and CEO of GrowthForce. So if you've got some people on your team that you want to develop into leaders, you want to really embrace getting a team that's going to last and get you there far and fast, be sure to play them this podcast. If you're new here, be sure to like and subscribe. I hope you enjoyed it. Looking forward to sharing more content with you. My name is Anthony Taylor from SME Strategy. This has been the Strategy and Leadership Podcast with my guest, Stephen King. Thanks for joining us, and until next time.